So my study was looking at how carbohydrates, and specifically an increase in carbohydrates in the diet, can affect an athletic performance and also the athletic mentality that comes with it, just how people perceive their workouts and how they do. So for some context, anyone looking to work out needs energy, obviously, and energy comes in easiest form through carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can improve performance. They've been shown to do so, but specific effects on the mind and body have still been relatively unclear or unanswered. There are a lot of questions regarding which audiences they may affect more, right diet, how much you should eat. So there's a lot of unclarity on how carbohydrates actually can impact. It's just known that they are good for energy. The body goes through a process called glycolysis where it creates ATP for your muscles. That's just how your muscles work. And to do this, it needs carbohydrates. That's its source of the phosphates it gets to create that ATP for your muscles to work. So having extra carbohydrate supplies can help your body create those extra energy and keep you going. So for my literature review, the first study I'm looking at is Adriano Lima Silva's. He was looking at how different carbohydrate diets can affect athletes' time to exhaustion. So until they feel until they feel totally done, out of energy, just unable to work anymore. So this black bar is the control. He was just using it as your average athlete coming in, and then he had two experimental setups. He had one person had a lot of carbohydrates, a much higher diet, and one he decreased by about 20%. And as he opined going into it, he thought that more carbohydrates would lead to more energy, more long-lasting endurance. And he actually found that people with more carbohydrate stores were able to last longer until total exhaustion. And he also found the inverse, that people with less carbohydrates going into the workout were not able to perform as well. The second study is Melanie Nafinki's study. She looked at the way that sleep affects performance. She was doing a totally different study, but it's something I incorporated a lot in my own. She looked at the way that sleep, and specifically sleep deprivation, could make performance worse based on motor skills and just fine performance in sports. And she found that generally as a trend, when people slept less, they had worse motor skills. So she also confirmed her idea going into the study, but she left a lot of questions at the end regarding her actual test audience. She said there was a lot of variability in the sleep schedules depending on age, and she actually didn't test younger participants, which she thought there might be a bigger relationship between sleep and performance. So that led me to my question. My study is looking at how a high carbohydrate diet can affect the performance and the mental state of youth endurance athletes. And I'm also looking at the way that other outside factors such as sleep and stress outlined in other research could affect specifically a young audience, where I'm looking at young endurance athletes in prolonged exercise. For my method, I used 12 high school participants across 3 sports. I did running, cycling, and rowing, and I just had them report to a form every day. I used an experimental diet that I gave all of them before the study. I had them use heart rate monitors to test the actual physical response from the body on how the carbohydrates were affecting them. And I had them use the sport-specific exercise equipment. This wasn't really dependent on the sport, it's more dependent on the diet, so I let them do it there at the demo. For my apparatus and actual collection, I used a survey to collect results just that were very easy quantitative data. And then I had some individual interviews to get quotes, qualitative data, see how it actually affected their mind throughout the procedure. Now, I considered a content analysis just because I wondered how this would actually affect, but there's a lot of study in this area. However, as I looked more into it, there was not much study done on youth participants. So I decided I need my own content, and for this, an experimental design was best. I was able to control variability, and I was able to create a research study that could really pertain to what I was looking at and answer new questions that hadn't been answered in the field. So for this, an experimental diet, experimental setup where I could control variables was the best option. So my first results on the actual carbohydrate effect on endurance. I found that over an average of 1 month, the participants did all have an increase in their performance. There's an average of 3.3%, and 100% of the participants at least showed some performance increase. No one showed a decrease. 67% of these participants had a measurable increase. Others said they may stayed the same, felt better, but 67% had a measurable increase in their performance in their own specific sport. 50% reported that they performed better, they felt better on the carbohydrate diet, they thought they had more energy going into it, and they had more energy going out. And 75% felt that they could do better on this diet. They said during the actual workout, high carbs made them feel like they could do more. more time to actual exhaustion, and they felt like they could lift more, push harder, run faster, all of the above. They just felt like they had more energy in them to actually get through the workout. 78% of the participants who felt they had eaten enough before going into the workout reported having better performance. I asked them in the survey whether they thought they ate enough, as well as the actual amount of carbohydrates they ate. And these correlated pretty well. People who thought they ate enough had more carbohydrates going into it, but people who thought they ate enough also had better effects throughout the entire process. They thought they ate enough, they ate a lot of carbohydrates, and it helped them throughout their performance. The average across all categories was shown as an increase in performance. These are the actual grams of carbohydrates they ate prior to their workout, and this is performance increase in percent based off of what they gave me at the beginning of the trial. People who ate between 0 and 25, so nothing to a very small snack before the workout, had a pretty marginal increase. It was more than 0. They didn't get any worse, but it was less than all of the others. Between 26 and 50 grams, so maybe a sandwich or something before working out, the participants showed quite a big increase, almost 4% in their performance over a month, which is very large considering the average is around 2 in a month. So more carbohydrates was able to help people boost their performance a lot more. And the golden range looked to be about 51 to 100 grams. This was a considerable snack, more than just a bar or something before working out, but it wasn't the more than 100 grams over here. We're actually having a whole meal. These participants showed the largest increase in performance and actual gains over the entire process of a month, and they were generally reporting to feel better over the whole trial. One participant said he actually felt better throughout the day, having more endurance through daily activities when he ate more. And he said that it just made his workouts a lot easier. I had individual one-on-one sessions with the participants, and a lot of them reported that eating more carbohydrates made them feel more energetic in all activities. And it actually led to a better workout later on where they were able to get more done, last longer, do more than they usually could. However, an interesting thing with all this data is that people who ate more than 100 carbohydrates actually had less than the 51 to 100 grams. These people also reported they felt a little bit too full, maybe they couldn't do as much just because they had eaten too much, and they felt that it actually hindered their performance a little bit and made it mentally tougher. Now this was interesting because I thought this would just keep going up as you ate more and more carbohydrates, you'd have more energy and you'd be able to last longer. But this also happened a lot in runners. Runners who ate a lot of carbohydrates reported feeling worse. They said when they ran it was bouncing and they couldn't perform as much. So it could also be exercise specific, whether how much they eat affected their performance in a positive way. A lot of the runners said it made their performance harder, it made it harder to work out, it just made it harder to get through the workout because they didn't feel like they could perform with all they eat. Now in the survey I sent out, I just asked how people would rate their sleep before the workout. I wanted to eliminate any outside variability in my data to really test how carbohydrates would affect performance. 50%, which is a good one, and these 50% that said they had good sleep going in, just average daily sleep, were the ones I used most of my data from. They were the most central, it eliminated most of the outside variability, and this was where I was able to get the meat of my results at. But 16% came in saying they didn't sleep enough, and 30% saying they got well above average. Now this is just going into the study. A lot of people felt that they hadn't slept enough. If you combine these two, that's 83% said they had a good amount of sleep going into the trial. Now if we correlate sleep level and performance, we can actually see that the really well-rested people had quite a significant rise in performance, almost double that of the average, and I mean near triple what the not rested people had. This went hand in hand with Melanie DeFinke's study where she outlined that sleep could improve motor skills a lot. The people with better sleep were able to perform better, and it got better performance results outside of the mental impact. It was able to increase their sport-specific performance results. They saw new PRs in their sport, they saw more weight lifted, maybe better technique in a game, or just better times across the distance. The people with more sleep were generally able to perform better. Participants that had better sleep had much more significant increases in their performance, and those without still increased in performance, but this could be due more to the carbohydrate diet or just the natural growth in youth athletes. These participants also reported feeling better while on the high carbohydrate diet. People in the average and well-rested category, which was 7+ hours, felt that with carbohydrates, it actually made their overall daily life and performance a lot easier, where people who were not rested generally didn't feel as much of the impact from a high carbohydrate diet. It almost negated the effects of the actual study, even though they generally trended to improve. Now, I also looked at stress, as Melanie Nafinki and other researchers looked at outside variables that could really impact performance. Stress and sleep came up as really big ones. I had people answer just a similar survey where they rated their stress levels on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being super stressed out, 5 being nothing at all. And it had a pretty similar impact to the way sleep affected performance. People who were very stressed out had generally worse performance, and they weren't improving as much on a high carbohydrate diet, where people who had really low stress would improve more with the effects of carbohydrates. It also went hand in hand with sleep. People who slept better, had less stress, and ate more carbs had the highest overall trend in performance throughout the whole study. They gained more than any other participant when they eliminated all outside variability and just stuck to the carbohydrate diet. People who were able to eliminate any effects from stress and sleep, or even gain positive effects from having less stress and more sleep, got more of a benefit from the high carbohydrate diet. So this leads to my conclusion. In Nafinki's study, she said in her current study, assessing with her subject variable, that was the way sleep could affect performance and fine motor skills, she said age was kind of tough, it was hard to eliminate, and she only had participants on the older side, which she said left a lot of questions open regarding the actual effect of sleep on youth participants. My study looked at this question directly. It answers it, and it looks at others like it that wondered how carbohydrates, sleep, and stress would impact youth athletes as opposed to just these elite male athletes who are the best in their sport. Carbohydrates generally benefited performance over time as well as energy levels in youth endurance athletes. I expected this going into the study. Based on the literature, I was able to prove what I thought would happen. More sleep, less stress, and more carbohydrates generally tended to improve performance over time compared to not having these resources for your body to draw upon. Sleep and stress were almost directly correlative in how you performed over time. Over a month, people with better sleep and less stress did a lot better and felt better on the diet than people with more stress and less sleep. This had a much larger impact on that mental effect in the athletes. People who slept more felt a lot better throughout the workout. They felt they could perform longer. People with less stress felt they could perform better without as much going on in their mind, and they were able to keep it clear throughout the whole process. This study had similar results in comparison with a lot of other studies in the field, but it did answer that gap of how actual carbohydrate loading can affect youth athletes. This was left largely unanswered in the field. Most tests have been done on elite male athletes, some in elite women, but lots less. And I answered this question by looking at how youth endurance athletes can be impacted from a high carbohydrate diet. I tried to eliminate outside variability with stress and sleep, but they also had a correlation to the diet. High stress levels and low sleep made performance a lot worse over time. Overall, the general trend was positive, though.